gripping the barbell, thumb width apart, retracted to press, placing the bar on the spine of the scapula. A little bit higher. That's it, good. That's where we want it. Now you see Matthias's foot position, it's directly under the barbell. A lot of people use a staggered stance. I want you to plant both feet firmly with the bar above the midline of your foot. So that bar, if you draw a straight line down, you'll be sitting just where he has his shoelaces. From there, we're going to take a big breath into our rib cage being here. Right? A lot of people breathe chest, so when you breathe into your chest, you'll feel like your head's going to explode. Whereas if you breathe into the lower belly, you won't feel very strong, but your gut will be distended. You want to breathe into my rib cage. Now, we're going to cover this a little later. We actually covered this in our bench press workshop, and it's an incredibly difficult thing to do unless you kind of warmed up with it. So this is a skill that you kind of want to practice before you get under the barbell. So when you breathe into the rib cage, you're going to stand up, unwrap the barbell safely. From there, he's going to take as minimal steps as possible to get into a squat position. That's usually about 3 to 4 steps. So you don't want to walk the entire length of the squat platform if possible. From that position, he's going to point his toes slightly out. The reason being is, this is what we call an externally rotated femoral position. Okay? The reason why we have the toes pointing out slightly is because we want to put your limbs in an advantageous position to use the adductors, which is the groin muscle inside in the inner thigh, and also your hip external rotator, which is your glute med and your glute max. From that position, what Matthias is going to do, and this is a tricky one, he's going to flex his quads, right? But I don't want you to just think down here. I want you to think up towards your hip flexor, right? This is the muscle that's up here. Now, a lot of people lack the control and lack awareness and sensation around the hips. That's something I want you to try and do. So I want you to try and flex the quad. From there, he's going to now spread the floor, although he's not actually moving. That creates tension, external rotation, and abduction, and that's going to switch on his glutes. From there, he's going to gently, without bending his knee, hinge from the hips, pulling his rib cage down towards the floor, just a smidge. Do that again for us. This is how little that movement is. That's all that is. Now, from that position, Matthias is simply going to push his knees out and sit. And back up. One thing I want you to do now is keep your eyes straight ahead, looking at path, and then hinge, hold, back up. A lot of the mistakes that we see when we're executing this movement happen at the hip joint. So when we ask you to do that nice little hip hinge, what we tend to see is the rib cage not moving. So rib cage stays still and only the hips move. Do that for me, that disjointed movement of the hip only moving. That's it. So it's a bit of an exaggeration, but what you'll get is you'll get this movement where you're now disconnecting the torso and the hips and the lower body. When you do that, we lose a little bit of the tension that we need in the midsection to create a stable spine. Can you rack it for me, please? What we found is the cues that we just talked about just now with Matthias and that we've demonstrated. You can actually start walking out if you need to. The cues that we just covered with Matthias have been really effective in addressing the issues that we've seen for about 50% of the population that we train. 2 issues that we commonly see making up the other 50%. First is, again, going back to that hip stability. Your hips are very, very tight, generally speaking, because we're sitting for most of the day, aren't we? Just not using your quadriceps correctly when we are asking you to squat. The reason why we don't use our quadriceps correctly is, one, it's weak. We also experience tightness in this position. So as you might have flexed it, but as soon as you start squatting, you find this like jamming sensation at the hip joint. The audience have that kind of hip pain? You do? Yes? Okay. Sinead, yes. Sinead, anyone else? I'm sure there's more people here. Tara? Yes? Nathan? Yes? Okay. So this is really, really common, and the reason is generally to do with your lifestyle and how it is, but that's not to say you shouldn't be able to squat. That's just something that we need to now address. We've got PTs that we talk to every day and other coaches where we've been kind of taught that if a muscle is tight, usually you look at the opposing muscle group to look to strengthen it, yada, yada, yada. That will help the entire structure come back to balance. But there are a few anomalies that we found. The hip joint, the rec fem, is both tight and weak. So just because it's tight doesn't actually mean it's strong. So that's why we do find that it kind of threw us off a little bit, because we've been looking at, okay, what's opposing the rec fem, the glutes. So you probably heard us do, like, hammer this into you guys, activate your glutes. Your glutes are your hip extensor, right? You need to get your glutes working. But you kind of imagine this, so if your hip's stuck, the glutes can only work within that stuck range. So you're never going to feel super strong when that hip is stuck in a position where it's not able to perform optimally. So we apply the rule of mobilize, stabilize, then strengthen. So Sinead, do you want to come up here for me? I'm going to do a little test. Form a body weight squat and show us how much of that hip is impinging on your movement. Yeah, and that's where you feel resistance straight away, right? Okay. This is going to help mobilize the hip joint into the end range. You're gonna do this. You're not going anywhere. We're gonna get you squatting beautifully. Fingers crossed. You're gonna place it very high up on your thigh, so it needs to be just underneath your bum. Now from there, we're gonna kneel down. That's it. Good. All right. Now, I want you to squeeze your bum forward. That's it. Push your hips forward. That's it. Go a little bit more. A little bit more. We're going to make her feel safe by taking it slow and really open up that rib cage for me. So lift up the ribs, that's it. And I want you to lean over that way just a tiny bit. Now as you're doing this, Sinead, I want you to squeeze your bum on that left side. So you're trying to push the pelvis further forward. What this is doing is it's mobilizing the hip joint capsule. About the first step to this, fix was mobilize. Then we're going to stabilize, which is what I'll show you in a second. Remember to have the toe down on the floor, that's it. And really try and squeeze that hip for me. And open up the ribs, look up. There you go, open up. And lean over that way. Okay. Now that she's done that, the hips, she should be able to stand a little bit taller, and she should be able to feel the hips open up just a tad more. Now once she's done that, we are going to move over here for just a smidge. And we're going to get Sinead to perform what we call a reverse plank. Okay. And then after this, we are going to go straight into actually getting her to use her rec fem through an exercise we call the dead bug. Slide down here for me. Okay. And we're just going to wrap this around your feet, really, just there. And then lie down just comfortably. Arms up to the ceiling like this, and raise your knee up 90 degrees. Just it, that's it, both of them. Now hold them down this way, just lie a little bit more. That's already a lot of stimulus on your rec fem, isn't it?
Yes.
You're already feeling that working, so that was incredibly weak in comparison to all of her other structures. She's probably got really good glutes, hamstrings, posterior chain, the lats, they're all working really well, but this is just struggling holding the legs up. So we probably don't even need the band, but if we wanted to progress this, we would then kick this leg down. Let's straighten it, hold it, straighten it. And that's going to try and pull this leg down that way even further. She's going to try and maintain this position. This is also engaging her anterior chain, isn't it? So her abdominals. So we've now done the posterior hip extensor. Now we're going to strengthen the hip flexor. Try outside for me, one more time. Sorry, I know I'm making you hold it for a really long time. So you see how that wants to keep going up this way a lot? Because it doesn't want to stay switched on. Try and keep it down a little harder. There you go. Hold that. And back up. Beautiful. And then back up. A little bit wider. And you're going to have to, not too wide, not too wide. And I need you to turn your toes out just slightly. And see how this big toe, if you watch Sinead, she lifts her big toe up as soon as she stops moving. That's a sign that the rec fem is switched off and the body's cutting power. That's why she can't squat down lower. Okay, so now we're going to try and jam the big toe down, and let's go do the same thing. So hold, more tension here. That's it. And hip hinge. There you go. Good, good, good. Jam the big toe down. That's it. Already a huge more improvement. I could accelerate this process by giving her a heel wedge. So that heel wedge takes away some of the pressure on her ankle, so she gives a little bit more ankle mobility. Hands up. We're going to jam the big toe down. We're going to squeeze the rec fem for me. That's it. We're going to pull the rib cage down for me. That's it. I'm going to drive the knees out. And jam this toe down, jam this toe down. Wonderful. And back up. Wonderful. Well done. Yay, it worked.